Welcome to the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting for 1 p.m. Monday, April 5th, 2021. First item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item on the agenda today is discussion with our federal land partners. So we should see some folks in our Zoom meeting.
Yeah, Commissioners, thanks. I'll just tee this off real quick. We should have Dennis Tyson from BLM and Holly Dukes from Deschutes National Forest joining us. We used to do this annually in older times, where we'd have the leadership of Deschutes National Forest and our local Prineville BLM district join the commissioners to talk about items of mutual interest and network, get to know each other a little bit better, and as the case may be. So I was given direction to try and resume those again this year. So I think it was all of 5 minutes before I received reply yeses from both Holly and Dennis, which was wonderful to see. So I've passed along to them a few items that the commissioner said were of interest to them as part of this discussion. Obviously, there's a complete array of issues that are of mutual concern for both the county as well as our federal partners. So with that, I guess I'll turn it over to either Holly or Dennis. We didn't have any prescribed order, so at the commissioner's pleasure, one of them can jump in.
Well, I want to say welcome and thank you for joining us via Zoom. We're in the room with our masks on, but I see you've got your video technology working. So thank you very much for joining us. It's good to really, kind of see each other almost face to face, but it's valuable to have these relationships and open discussion. Open discussion at our public meeting. So thank you for joining us. Holly, if you want to go first, say hi. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having Dennis and I. We see a lot of each other on this technology, so we're getting pretty used to it. But I really appreciate you taking the time to spend some time with us. And we did get a few of the topics you were interested in that we can tag team on. And I'm sure Dennis has a couple of updates or two we'd like to share as well.
Dennis, you want to say hi real quick? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, good afternoon. Dennis Teitzel, District Manager here in Prineville. It's really great to, one, get the invite, and two, the opportunity to work with you all as we move forward through the fun things that we get to do and also the not so fun things that we have to manage. So appreciate this opportunity.
Great. Yeah, thank you for joining us. Yeah. Any thoughts or questions to start?
Oh, I just want to thank Dennis for all his work putting through people together for the Mackenzie Canyon project that my neighbors were in the process of making a difference so they can actually get out if we do have a fire at that really horrible spot right off of Mackenzie Canyon, which would eliminate their way out either direction. So thank you. I know they're pleased that as much has happened as has, and I do believe it's because of you, Dennis. So thanks.
I'll just say that between your two agencies, you manage over 75% of about 75% of Deschutes County. So there are so many issues of mutual interest and potential opportunities to partner on working on things. So I'm really excited to have this conversation today.
Great. Well, and that's kind of my concept too, the fact that 79% of the county is public land, and most of that's Forest Service and BLM. So that really is our backyard, our outdoors, our the trees and the wildlife. So and then the impacts on that. So yeah, let's go from there. Anything you want to start off with, Holly?
I'm open to any topic. I think we could maybe start with one of the ones that I know Dennis and I share, which is around fuels reduction, fire season preparedness, those sorts of things, if that works for everybody.
Yes.
I'll share a few thoughts and then ask Dennis to jump in. we are getting ready for fire season. Things like Redmond Air Center are ramped up and folks are doing their training. We completed our hiring, so getting ready to get into fire season activity. Obviously, folks probably saw we're already responding to fires with the winds we had the other weekends, and do that in partnership with BLM, obviously, and with ODF and county and city partners. So I think the relationships we have in Central Oregon around fire makes us super successful when things happen, even that early season. The other thing I'd share is we are also starting prescribed burning. We did some further south down in northern Klamath County last week, as well as out east, but really trying to be deliberate about where those burns are this year, respectful of smoke, but also respectful of the importance that those are for protecting communities and the restoration work. So should be seeing more press releases as we get those weather windows where we can do prescribed burning successfully. I think the other piece of really good news around fuels reduction is along with NRCS and other partners, we did get Joint Chiefs funding for a fuels and aquatic restoration project that is a landscape of West Bend kind of up into Sisters Country. So starting this year for 3 years, we'll get about a couple $1 million to work with our partners to do fuels reduction on both forest land and private lands as well as some aquatic restoration projects that watershed councils and others have all wanted to do. So that's really good news for us. As far as the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Act, we were ranked #1 for an extension for that. There was not funds for those new projects this year, but we're hoping to see that next year as budgets roll out. And that's a lot of the work around the West Bend area. And I think I'd end it with that. There's lots of work going on in fuels reduction all across the landscape, and that will continue. So, Dennis, what did I miss? What do you want to add from a BLM perspective?
Just a couple of things. Probably one, most of our fuels reduction funding comes with, from what we call wildlife money, which is tied to sage grouse habitat and resiliency of that species. And so where we can grab money to work within the WUI, we do. Also working with our partners within the WUI, to get to make those opportunities available to make that happen. Significantly with some of the resort communities that are out there where they have access to BLM or transit across BLM. Part of that is fuels reduction is part of their permitting with us, also the roads and the rights of ways to make sure those accesses stay open. As it was pointed out earlier, access for folks is very important. Not only access to public lands, but also access for people being able to leave their property in the event of a wildfire, safely, orderly, without tying up the other major roads and thoroughfares. And as those are identified, as we can in the most expedient manner, get those opened up and available for folks. Probably one project tied to the Dingle Act. That's the Steelhead Falls, Crooked River Ranch area. That was passed into law a couple years ago. We did get funding to do the environmental assessment for that. Actually the comment period for that closed yesterday for the draft environmental assessment. So we'll spend the next month cleaning that up and hopefully have a decision out by early May to move that project forward. And then our next steps will be waiting on funding for that and then getting that into contracting with the intent of doing that work next winter, spring, when the timing's right to go in there. We already have done some fuels reduction in there. We did that last spring with our own crews and personnel, and that was I should know how many acres we did off the top of my head. I think it was about 140 acres or so, and we've got about 1,200 more acres to go in there and do, and that's what the environmental assessment's for. Larger project, a little more scrutiny we needed to do to be able to do that. So, again, with fire, our partnerships are key. I really miss not doing the all agency simulation last year and this year. I think it's very important for us all to do that, to understand that. And so that's probably one thing I would say is when we get the chance and we can do those again, I really encourage everybody to participate, and I look forward to participating in that. It's a lot easier if we get to know each other at those events than when things are not so well.
It's been also referred to as the pre-smoke meeting, but that's already came and went this year. Isn't that amazing? It is very valuable to get in the room and understand. In fact, I remember years ago, some of the first meetings I went to, and sure enough, as soon as I was invited to go see an incident, I recognized a lot of the folks out there. So that was pretty valuable, at least by face. I didn't know all the names. But that is what we're talking about here, because when it's hot and heavy and flames are moving, that it's good to know that we have some confidence that we've met before. So that's exactly what that's about. One question, just kind of the high level. Are the prescription scenarios stabilized for the fuel reduction that's happening out there? You mentioned the EIS for these projects, but is the path getting kind of more clear or I don't know, easier or whatever the terminology might be, but kind of the prescription for what the forest or the different lands should look like. My point is, I think we've turned a corner in the last few years on some of this, how controversial it is to manage the forest. Any thoughts on that?
One way to kind of flesh out that question a little bit would be, I think I know the answer to this, but it would be great to hear from the two of you how long it's been since you had litigation on a fuels reduction, on a veg management or fuels reduction project, NEPA process. Because I know Commissioner DeBowen is tracking broadly, across Eastern Oregon that there are some areas where we have more controversy than others, and it's my opinion that because of earlier collaborative efforts, we have worked out a lot of kinks, and so we haven't had litigation, or really difficult objection resolution processes in a while for projects around here.
So for the BLM on that, most projects have some kind of mitigation tied to them, and it's from best practices to wildlife concerns, offsets due to eagle nesting, big game movement, things like that. That's all tied to part of the mitigation. As for the public, this is probably one of the, in fact, I can tell you, this is the best area I've been in working with the public in fuels reduction, particularly with prescribed burning and the public understanding the need for it, the benefits of it, and promoting that. And my last duty station was up in Alaska. You would think in the middle of nowhere, nobody would really care if we're going to do a fuels project. It was not that easy. So this area here, it's just the locals, the people that live here, the county governments, the local politicians are all very supportive, and we do a lot, particularly with the collaborative and Joe and his folks, and getting that moving forward and keeping that in everybody's mind, and not thinking that well, we've done this, we're done. We're always trying to move forward. So from our point of view, it's really been great. I don't know, Holly?
So I was trying to rack my brain on when the last litigation on a veg management project was, and I think, don't quote me because I missed a few years here when I was on the west side. I think it was probably about a decade ago on the EXF project is the last one that I can remember. And so I would agree with what Dennis said. You know, we get a lot of support for forest management, particularly fuels reduction and restoration work across Central Oregon. And I think for me, the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project has been a huge part of that. They really help give us diverse perspectives before we're sending out information to the larger public. And, you know, we'll get objections on projects and we've been able to work through those and avoid litigation for a long time. So I'm hoping we retain that going forward.
Then the next concept are contractors available? You know, so now there's work being done, there's some money flowing. Is the contractor pool, available? Is there, or is it getting backed up there now? It's all resource and balance.
We haven't seen, a reduction in the availability of contractors when we've needed them. Fortunately, the same folks who do fuels work are the same folks who do firefighting for us for contract. So it kind of, rounds out their year of employment and keeping their folks employed. So I think, it's not like we're trying to grab them for two different things. And it's really is a pretty specialized, business, on who needs them and who's going to contract with them. I mean, the occasional private landowner will do a contract with them to do some reduction. I did some on my 4 acres and, they were out for a couple days and they were done. But it took them a few months to schedule that and fit it in. And so, really, I think the availability is there. It's just really working around, personal things and, making sure their employees are available. And if we're having to work a weekend, does that fit into their life, into their work-life balance? Yeah. And so just like for our folks and everybody else.
I have a question.
I agree with Dennis. I haven't heard any concerns about contractor availability. I think the closest thing that came to a concern, of course, was when the Gilchrist Mill was shut down. Just having a local place for pine logs to go was definitely a concern for a while. So I think a collective sigh of relief that that has reopened.
Yeah, I want to get down there and say hi to the new owners at some point, so that'll be fun. Commissioner Dare.
Yes, I do have a question because last year we were in Region 6 and we didn't do any prescribed burning. Did we at all impact the amount of prescribed burning that we're going to be doing this year because we didn't get to do any last year? Is there any kind of a catch-up happening in 2021, or are we just continuing forward?
I would describe for the Forest Service, the BLM was a little different last year, and I'll let Dennis address that. But we didn't burn last year on Forest Service in Region 6. I would say, this year our approach isn't necessarily to rush around and try to catch up, but to just progress forward and try to get those high priority burn blocks done when we have the right weather to do so. Just still trying to be sensitive to smoking communities, but also know that we, again, with DCFP have made a lot of progress around smoke and why prescribed burn smoke may be beneficial in the long run from wildfire smoke. So intention is to be deliberate and continue forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, for us, we didn't really have the the smoke concerns that the forest did, and mainly because our projects are in more remote areas, not in the WUI, not up against the population centers, and as for catch up, it's prescribed burning is one thing we don't want to rush. We don't want to take risks at. We're either in prescription or we're not. And we've got a project ready to go or it's not ready to go. And probably our biggest limiting factor is finding days that we're in prescription, when it's a good time to start burning. On the BLM side, we've stopped burning for this year, and that's because most of our lands were in a little different climate zone than the forest. And we're finding it's a lot drier and the fuels are burning a little hotter than we like. And that was as of a couple weeks ago. So we pretty much put a hold on it unless we get some pretty significant moisture or something. So.
Well, it was a kind of a contrast, I guess you could say. We didn't do the burning in the Forest Service, and yet we had 8 days of smoke levels in Deschutes County, especially like in Sisters and Black Butte, that were what, in the 900s. I know it was at 600 at my house a couple days. The air quality index was unbelievable. And now when I look back at when you do a prescribed burn, I'm sure that those numbers they don't touch it. So anyway.
Puts it in perspective, yeah.
Yes, it definitely was. It was the highest of the world, because I was checking the chart for all those days and going, wow, nobody had it worse.
So as you can tell from a lot of these questions, basically what county commissioners are wondering is, how do we get more done faster? And it is helpful to kind of go through and talk about how planning is not, the major bottleneck, and contractor capacity is not necessarily a major bottleneck, in my opinion. Having worked in this realm for a while, I believe that the major bottleneck is funding, because many of these treatments can generate a little bit of revenue off of commercial material that is included in thinning projects, but it's not nearly enough to cover all of the non-commercial thinning and mowing and prescribed fire costs that we have. And so what I'd like to ask about is how, I'd like to ask what line items, what programs you use to fund the work that we're talking about. And I know, I know the Forest Service end of the equation a little bit better. Hazardous fuels, the hazardous fuels account, and then, some kind of special sub-programs like the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Act or Joint Chiefs. But Holly, I'd love to hear if there are other programs, specific federal fund programs that, or line items that are important to your work. And Dennis, when you were talking about how most of the fuels money that goes to the BLM these days is being channeled into sage-grouse habitat areas, and we don't really have significant sage-grouse habitat area in Deschutes County, at least not in the, not overlapping with wildland-urban interface areas. And then you said, well, when we get a little bit of fuels money for WUI work, we definitely like to use it. I'd be very interested to hear what programs that money comes through, that that fuels money that isn't prioritized to go to sage-grouse habitat, but instead which can go to WUI projects. And part of the reason I'm asking about all these line items and programs is because I have an interest in advocating during the appropriations process for increased funding in some of these programs. And I know that you guys, being federal employees, are not allowed to advocate for those funding programs. So I know that if we want to see that money coming, which is, in my opinion, the key to unlocking more work getting done, that we have to advocate for it. So yeah, you could just kind of let me know what the programs are that you use to fund your work. I'd be very interested to hear that.
Want me to go first, Dennis?
Sure, you can go first.
Okay. Well, you rattled off, a lot of them, which is the CFLR program, the Joint Chiefs program. And what I would say about those is I think Central Oregon competes extremely well for those programs and projects because we have the collaborative backing and community support. So I just want to acknowledge that's extremely important when we go forward with those proposals, that we're not the only signatories and we have letters of support for those. The other program that the Deschutes has used in Oregon is the Federal Forest Program in partnership with ODF to get some work done, whether that's help with things like surveys or planning. That's been a piece for us. And the other piece that we're currently embarking on with ODF is Good Neighbor Authority work, where they're both helping us with getting additional timber sales out, which is the first step in that fuels reduction restoration work. And we're talking to them about how else we can partner to get more work done both across boundaries and on national forest land into the future. So those would be the other ones I would highlight.
Thanks, Howie.
So for the BLM, we're not, I don't think we're really that much different, but we just call it different things and it comes different process. But for fuels reduction, we actually have a fuels reduction budget that comes. It's separate from the rest of our budget, and it's earmarked. And it comes down. Some of it is general for office, maintaining the office and the staff and paying the staff and that. And then a good chunk of it, the majority of it actually is project specific. And so that's one vehicle. The other vehicle is through our wildlife and habitat funds. And that's where we get most of our funding that's tied towards sage grouse because it's habitat specific and tied for the recovery of the sage grouse and keep that species viable moving forward to minimize the impacts to other activities that we may want to go on. It's funding is one issue, one of the many issues. Personnel and staffing size is another issue. We have a limited amount of capacity to be able to process the environmental assessments, to set up the units, do the contracting, all the background work that goes into it. And and some of that is being worked on. There is some transition to or transformation, I should say, to try to change a lot of our seasonal positions to permanent full-time year-round positions, which will help us in that capacity issue. The other side is changing some of our seasonal positions to career seasonal positions, which means they're permanent positions for people to come back to year after year. And how much time they take off during that year is a negotiation between us, our funding ability, and how much time they want to take off. They're obligated, and we're obligated for a 6-month stint. On the BLM side, we can extend that up to 11 months and 2 weeks, 25 pay periods. They have to take at least 2 weeks without pay sometime during the year. And that will increase our capacity and our ability as we have funding for projects. We have the salary available to pay them to stay on and do that work and increase that. So we're working towards that capacity issue, and I think that will help us moving forward. And those are really, the issues and the bottlenecks. More money always helps, but only to a certain extent. Some other things have to come with it. So,
Good to know.
Well, we can switch from fuel reduction in trees to solid waste in cars. So I know we've been a partner in that just recently. So, the county commission decided, let's just write a number X to get a few vehicles out of the forest. And then there's a partnership that I'm sure, has been authorized at your level somewhere along the line, a line item. But yeah, getting just vehicles that are abandoned and burned out from the side of the road. And then also the RVs, that's the next step. That's a lot more expensive. We do solid waste here in Deschutes County, the county's franchise and landfill operations. So we always want to keep it low cost and easily accessible solid waste disposal so it doesn't happen out in the public lands. Any thoughts on that? There you go. Well,
so, this is a great partnership, and that's what it takes to get through this. About a year and a half ago, we did a meeting with all the agencies and organizations in the three-county area there at BIAC. Just one to kind of, let everybody kind of realize the enormity of the issue and what's going on. Not that I think anybody thought it was a large issue, but also to really talk about the differences between the different organizations and agencies and what their abilities and authorities allowed them to do. And, we ended up publishing out a trifold, kind of listing all the different major landowners and what their limitations were for unhoused people and being able to, and people camping or staying on, the lands that they manage, either, federal public lands, city, county, or specific organizational lands, water districts, park and recs, so on. And I think that went a long way to helping that out and identifying the problems. And as we come across these abandoned vehicles, dump sites, and that, who to contact to get them managed and dealt with. Here on the BLM side, we've finally gotten a few positions filled. One is our hazardous waste position. Unfortunately, this isn't like back in the 70s or 80s where you came across a couple of garbage bags and didn't think twice about grabbing them, throwing them in the back of your car, and taking them home or to the dump and getting rid of them. Chances are it's now hazardous waste of some type, either drug paraphernalia or biohazard from human waste, and not exposing our employees or the public to that. So we've got some folks on staff now who, can deal with those issues, and they do. And we've also managed to reach out with some local organizations who can, for a very reasonable price, help us get in. And as we find these abandoned cars, this abandoned equipment, material, tents, whatever you want to call it, RVs, and very short notice, very quickly get them in and get some of these sites cleaned up, at least to the point where they're not an attractive nuisance to the next group of people. And so we can keep those areas clean a little bit longer and maybe get some rehabilitation in that area before we get some permanent resource damage happening. And it's, and we're finding we've got some success with it. Cars are always an issue. It's kind of a, depends on the market. We did have a couple of scrap yards that would come and take the vehicles for us, and not charges, or charges very minimally. That's kind of dwindled now with their costs and the lack of value in those vehicles. And RVs are the same thing. They're a lot of work. There's a lot of trash that goes with them. And oftentimes they're not easy to move. It's not hooking them up and towing them out. It's bringing in another trailer, some type of equipment to lift them onto it, get them out of there safely. So it is a, quite an effort on everybody's part to make that happen. So.
I definitely like to, I like to talk about the intersection between, I like us to intersect with homelessness on public lands at some point, but I don't want to move away from the vehicles and illegal dumping without asking first whether you have what sense you have of how much kind of trash and abandoned vehicles on public lands in this area at this point is related to homeless populations, and how much is, what we used to see, which is, people who didn't want to take their stuff to the landfill and pay tipping fees, just going out and like dumping a bunch of junk in the public lands. Do we still have that component, or is a lot of the waste we're dealing with related to homeless encampments?
It's really hard to divorce the two issues. It's yes, we have people who do dump on public lands. Yes, we do have people who abandon vehicles. the attraction to do that is their ability to blend it in with everything else that's going on, and it not be as noticeable as, you know, something new, unique, that can be traced back to them, or they look out of place doing it. You know, it's when people do see people going up and dumping onto public lands, we get a lot of phone calls about that. And we're very active and very aggressive in contacting those folks, you know, giving them the option to go up and clean it up, and being able to move forward there to, you know, our main emphasis is about education for the public and how to treat their public lands, not giving people a ticket or fining them in that. You know, but so we've got really good, particularly around the neighborhoods that are tied to public lands. People are really good about contacting us, but they do it because they think, you know, oh, there's a pile of trash already there, and we try to, you know, and so they're just adding to it so it blends. Same with vehicles. There's already a vehicle or two here, and unfortunately, you know, a lot of them are abandoned by homeless or unhoused people who, you know, they got it there, it stopped running for some reason, and, you know, battery's dead, whatever, tires go flat, they rot, you know, and so they just, you know, bring another car and park it next to it, or another vehicle. And that's one of the reasons why we're, you know, our emphasis is, as soon as we find an abandoned site, that we try to go in and clean it up as quickly as possible, so that, one, nobody comes and dumps extra trash there, or more trash and garbage in, or that somebody doesn't come in and try to claim that and try to then limit our ability to be able to clean that up and get rid of it. And you know, the main thing, and this is the hard part, you know, with the unhoused concerns, is, you know, we do have to be very human in how we move forward through that. You know, these are people, you know, they have a variety of reasons why they're living the lifestyle they choose to, or they're forced to. Oftentimes it's not a choice, but making sure that they get the help and the security that they need moving forward. And then, more importantly, you know, the children that are involved, and making sure that they get the resources and the protections that they need as we move forward. So, but it's all tied together, and the unhoused issue has exacerbated the trashing and the dumping, you know, exponentially compared to what we normally would see, at least from our side. Holly?
I probably wouldn't add much more to what Dennis said. You know, we do see a mix. You know, as an example, last week, you know, we found mystery barrels that were dumped on the forest that also take a lot of money and resource to clean up and get rid of, and we don't know what's in them. So I'd say it continues to be a mix of things, but really appreciate the commissioners contributing some funds to help us get some of the vehicles in China Hut dealt with, along with some of our funds and resources. So I do appreciate that. I know it's a tiny step, but it's a step.
I think the neighbors so appreciated, Holly, that we are trying to do something there. You know, when you just see more and more dumping, and, you know, somebody's got to stop it. It happens right next to my house, that my husband sees when he goes out walking on BLM property, and people will bring in and they will dump stuff. I mean, I don't believe we have any homeless people there at the moment, but anyway, he gets so upset. So you know, sometimes I think if you can clean it up sooner than later, it's a better message.
Well, we need to make sure that, you know, the culture of, you know, just respecting the lands around us, for sure. You know, I mean, in Boy Scouts, you know, we were able to go camping, and we were told to leave it better than we found it. You know, I mean, that's where you start when you think about that. You know, when somebody's, you know, doesn't have permanent housing, living in the forest in the middle of the summer can be a treat, but not year-round is not comfortable at all. And then also, being able to have family camping trips and hunting in the fall, there's multiple uses out there also. Let's all, set that culture of respecting the outdoors and not using up the resource. So I see the sheriff has joined us. Are you joining us in the joint conversation with the Forest Service and BLM today?
Absolutely. I'm not
Great.
a federal partner. I'm a local
Yes.
partner. So thanks for the invite.
Thank you. Yeah, we were just talking about, we did start the project and removing some vehicles out there, just the partnership on that. Sounds like it's a standard order of business. And then, Mr. Teitzel, thank you very much for explaining that concept of, it does attract, once there's an abandoned vehicle, oh, this is where I put my abandoned vehicle. And you know what? 2 or 3 of them there. I can understand that concept for sure.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share just a little bit of what Holly and Dennis were mentioning, and they're exactly right. This is a combination of issues. It really comes down to individuals who are using different lands. And that can be within city limits, in the county's jurisdiction, or federal lands, or even private lands. And it just comes down to folks have to follow the rules. We're here to enforce the rules. And at the same time, we've got resources to try and assist individuals that truly need a hand up in order to get back on track. And I think sometimes that this issue becomes a difficult one to talk about because these topics all get lumped into one category when in reality there's several different categories. And the one elephant in the room is this community is blessed to have all of these resources to help folks out that are less fortunate, or help folks out that need to get back on the path to being able to be productive, or get resources to get back on that path. And the fact of the matter is, if you have those resources that are originally designed to help those members within your community, that others from outside your community will come in to seek those resources out. I've had personal experience visiting with individuals who locate here to seek those resources out. My wife, who just recently retired from law enforcement, spoke to a gentleman who had ridden the train, and it wasn't a passenger train, but had hitched a ride on a train to come out here for a local shelter and the resources that shelter provided. And I don't share that right, wrong, or indifferent. I share that as a basis of fact. And so that is one of the things. You can try and build capacity into a local area, but you will never have enough capacity because you have the resources to begin with. And I just think that's something that we need to be cognizant of. I just had a friend that returned from Montana, and he said, you don't see any individuals using the land to live on or anything there because there's no social services. So as you look and you expand these different services, I think it's really important, and it's something the Sheriff's Office is doing, that we have a tough love concept. And the Houston, Texas mayor talks about the tough love concept quite a bit, where you're out there and you're enforcing the rules and the regulations at the same time you're offering resources to assist individuals with a hand up or to get back on track to being a productive citizen. And I think that's why all of us ought to pay close attention to the proposed Oregon Department of Transportation and U.S. Forest Service trail that's proposed around the area of the High Desert Museum to Lava Butte. I'm opposed to that trail, but I'm in conversations with Department of Transportation and then our partners at the Forest Service. And the reason I'm opposed to it is until we can get the situation at hand here under control, and I'm talking about how folks use public lands, and I'm speaking in a broad statement here because you have that use. I've talked to Facebook contractors who came in a year or two ago, and they use the public lands to stay on while they work here because we don't have a lot of capacity sometimes for rentals, et cetera. So when you talk about that, if we don't have that situation under control, or we don't have thoughts and plans on how we're going to take care of that, a path to Lava Butte is just going to become infrastructure for people to stay. And that's not what we want. We do not want to create a situation there where we'll have to have a law enforcement presence. I know several of you remember the deaths that we've had in living situations south of town in these encampments or these places where people go and use the public lands. And it's not a good situation. And so this project, if it moves through, in the end, it won't be used for its intended purpose. And I think there's many examples that have been cited there. But I'm open to any questions as well.
Well, there's definitely some big conversations that need to happen. I was just having a discussion earlier. You know, 10 years ago, there was a document published. It was the 10-year plan to end homelessness. And I mean, it has changed drastically. So, you know, my thought is there's a huge conversation there. You want to jump in?
I definitely would like to say some things before we move on from that topic.
Well, yeah,
I don't want to cut you off.
Basically, I was just, let's do what we need to do. But there's so much positive about it, this partnership and the public lands also. So, but please.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, talking about homelessness in our community is a very complex topic, and I'm personally of the opinion that there are certain conditions that we have here that are going to that will contribute to us having a substantial homeless population for the foreseeable future. And so, well, one of the things I was excited about engaging in this topic with our federal lands partners today was to just say that the Forest Service and the BLM are just two agencies among many levels of government and many landowners in Central Oregon who are dealing with the impacts of a whole set of conditions in our community that are creating a substantial size homeless population. And I hope that we can all coordinate our efforts and partner. Both of you have used that word partner today. And I certainly place a lot of value on it. So we need coordinated intergovernmental efforts to make sure that that people who are trying to get their lives on track have appropriate, stable, safe places to transition back to housed and employed life and things like that. And we also need to make sure that the places where we're serving these people, we are also being good stewards of the land. And I know that is a particular challenge for agencies that are intended to be land management agencies first, and not necessarily social service agencies first. So I'm excited to see what the county can do to be a good partner in that context and help provide those services. And I'm really glad that we have federal land managers who are interested in partnerships like that as well.
Are our cameras off? Is that the problem right now?
There's
Go back to the beginning screen. But
a problem with the video that we're currently trying to.
okay, I just
We have audio on the Zoom, but we're at just the holding screen on the video right now.
I just wanted to acknowledge, Dennis, you mentioned that meeting, I believe it was in June of 2019. The room was full of people, and listening to the BLM representative that said he spent 90% of his time dealing with the homeless. And we were talking about it, and there are many reasons why people are homeless, but what is it we can do? But I think we also have to think of the other side of it and safety for those neighborhoods, particularly since we just did have that meeting on China Hat last week. The neighborhood doesn't feel safe. They don't feel safe from the violence that's there, Sheriff Nelson, and they don't feel safe from the fire worries that what if a fire does start, and we actually have such a dry year this year. So, there's a lot of issues, and I definitely am appreciative of all the coordinated efforts that we're doing now in order to actually help the neighborhood and then help the people that are there, and the people that are there that are working, find them a spot where they can actually live so that the impact on the forest is going to be lessened, because there's serious impacts the way things are going now.
Well, and, tourism was in that same spot, overlove our tourism resources, and that's what was being discussed just a couple years ago, and now it's just evolving. So, as I say, it's the big picture. We're seeing, population and the economy transformation on top of COVID, too. So it's just amazing.
I know,
seeing
I mean,
things
that meeting was in 19 when we had, the 100 people in the room, from all the different agencies. So you think about, okay, now we put COVID on top of it. I was actually personally working on the homeless in the 90s.
Yeah.
And I think, oh my gosh, what was I doing then and does it look today? So it's, want to help those people that we can help. Heard a great story the other day about someone who actually was homeless and now is transitioned back to working. And that's a great story.
Mm-hmm.
But we need more of those.
Yeah, yeah, and we need to, and it's, I mean, if you track the news headlines, it sort of feels like between federal and state and local government landowners, that sometimes it feels like homeless populations are basically just being kind of pushed from one place to another. And the federal lands is a place where people do often end up, and if those aren't the places that we want people to be, then it's I think in our best interest to figure out where it is okay to host people in transitional housing setups for extended periods of time while we help some of them get back on their feet.
Yep. Well, let's jump gears a little bit. So, the business of, I'm looking at the BLM activity report, and it talks about communication sites, right-of-ways, real estate training, just those co-located, it's referred as wildland urban interface. But, I know people buy a parcel of land and there's public land on the other side of the fence, so there's some, definitely some activity there. Let's make sure we're communicating as these things are happening. I know we have our property people at the county also, and then we get direct contacts from folks. So it's great to have the relationships. So from our discussion here, any thoughts? We're just trying to round out the discussions today.
I would also love to go to recreational.
Sure.
Yeah, kind of a recreation, demand for recreation in the area, and what infrastructure we have to accommodate that use, which, as everybody knows, outdoor recreation in Central Oregon and Deschutes County is just exploding. Every year, it seems like we break records on, numbers of people who are here to recreate in the forest and out in the desert and on the river and places like that. And so I am particularly interested in questions of, how do we spread that use out across a broader area and accommodate more and more people coming here, again, without, as you're referring to the conversation that we were having just a few years ago, Commissioner DeBoe, how do we do that without thrashing the land? And I know that, for example, along the Cascade Lakes Highway, there's been, people are always asking, well, why can't we have another snow park? Why can't we add more trails? And there are certain areas that may very well be saturated in terms of recreational use, and so that raises questions for me about, where else can we develop recreational amenities in our community, and you see things like the recreational development that the BLM did around Klein Buttes and Maston allotment and places like that just a few years back, and I think that's a great addition to the region and can give people additional places to go when they come out and they've kind of got Smith Rock on their mind, but they can't find a place to park, but they can go somewhere else and take a hike. So I guess one of the things I would love to, not to put our public lands partners on the spot, but just to mention that I will be very interested in talking about kind of where we can where we can develop more trails, where we can develop more campgrounds, where we can develop more, river put-ins and things like that, that would help us to disperse this kind of steadily increasing recreational use across our community and, mitigate the impacts on any one particular slice of Deschutes County and our federal lands. But still give people a place to go that's special.
So just confirming, so Holly Jukes from the National Forest and Dennis Teitzel are here on audio with us and not video at the moment. There is going to be an opportunity to reset the system. But yeah, Holly, are you still available?
I sure am.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
So I just wanted to share one thought to the previous conversation, not to drag it on because I don't want to do that either. I just want to echo the appreciation for the county working with us on issues around residing on national forest land, because I agree that it's going to take all of us to come up with some solutions that are longer term, and I can certainly say that it's not my area of expertise, nor is it probably anybody in the Forest Service. So really appreciate the help we've gotten so far and hope we continue that conversation. And then I'll switch to recreation. Obviously last year, people thought that we already weren't seeing exponential increases in recreation use here, but people found the outdoors as an escape. So we saw, I think we're estimating 30 to 40% more people on the Deschutes last year than we did in previous years, which is saying something. So one of the things we've been working on with Visit Central Oregon, Visit Bend, and others is a responsible recreation series to help try to make some of those people who maybe newly found Central Oregon or newly found the outdoors or refound the outdoors again in their lives, way to be better stewards of public land. So just want to share that that's been a big effort of all of ours, recognizing we suddenly had lots more people and how do we convert them to stewards of the land. So that is a big emphasis area. I think one of the groups we've been working with is the Deschutes Trails Coalition, which has been around for several years, trying to help particularly the Deschutes National Forests. And I think they're expanding to other land ownerships now, really prioritize trails and new trails, knowing that we get tons of proposals and requests. And we're also trying to balance the piece of wildlife habitat. There was a really good story, I think it was last week, in the news about the impacts of population change on things like big game, which is specifically deer. So we're continuing trying to find that balance where we don't have trails bisecting core habitat for some species that folks also rely on for hunting and wildlife viewing and those sorts of things. So consistent balancing act. And that group has been working on a decision support tool with an outside contractor to help make those decisions for us. And plus it has all the diversity of trail user groups from motorized to non-motorized to winter to summer. The other thing I'd share is with all the use we saw last year, we also saw an increase in user created trails. Some of those weren't in the best of locations, so we've spent some time getting rid of some of those that are most impactful to habitat or water. So again, I think we're trying to get back on how to responsibly recreate. I think the other thing that we're seeing come is that the Great American Outdoors Act was passed, and so we're starting to see in the Forest Service some additional funds come for recreation deferred maintenance, which goes back to some of that infrastructure ask where we're trying to keep up the infrastructure we have and make it more viable to use. Things like boat launches come to mind, Lava Lands Visitor Center, Lava River Cave, those sorts of places. So a lot going on. I'll be honest, I feel like we're a little behind in recreation world just because the demand came so fast at us last year. So a couple of thoughts to share and certainly open to questions.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah, growing into the recreation demand that just popped. I hadn't really thought of it like that because I knew the concept, but yeah, that's true. There's just efforts to grow into that now.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we don't need to cut off. We've been at an hour here. We do have something following. I don't know, any other thoughts or hot topics?
I think that was a good first discussion.
Yeah, so thank you very much for joining us. It is about the relationships. Thank you so much for what you're doing for the citizens and the large swaths of public land you represent.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
anytime you feel that there's something we need to discuss, don't hesitate to call or invite us to commissioners meeting, and we're grateful and happy to come and participate.
Great, thank you. We'll do it in person someday in the future. Maybe not next time, we'll see.
Let's actually hope the Capitol Press was wrong when they put Central Oregon was going to be the hotspot this spring. So I think that was the cover story last Friday. And yeah, with all that you're doing in order to, keep our area safe, and with all the community is doing, I think that having the two fires a week ago Sunday was woke up a lot of people and realized that everyone needs to step up. So thank you.
Fire-free days are coming.
Yes, they are May and to June 5th.
Okay, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Take care.
So at this time, we're going to take a moment and going to item number 2, but resetting video possibly, so we have opportunity. Yep. There we go. Oh, yeah.
That's fine by me, and if it helps, I have it up on my computer too. So I can at least keep track of myself, perhaps. We'll see how that works out.
You can follow, and you're Paula?
I'm Paula.
Hello, nice to meet you. We spoke on the phone, yeah.
Yes, nice to meet you as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Should I just go ahead and,
One moment, just, if we can get something.
It looks like it might be working.
Yeah, there we go.
woohoo, bravo to the
I have a
tech.
hunch we could be able to switch around now. So at this time, it'll be item number 2, a presentation and discussion of commercial property assessed clean energy, the CPACE program. And Tom Anderson can start us.
Thanks, Commissioners. Just real quick, Paul is all set up and ready to go, but as you know, we've heard a little bit about the CPACE program for a couple of months now. Different pieces of information have come to us. Paul has sent a range of different handouts and documents that describe the program. We understand it has been established in other places, and I'm sure you'll hear about that today. But as Paul and I communicated, we view today as just sort of an introduction to the program where she will present it. There may be some partners online, I understand as well, to hear about it, ask questions, have some interaction, and whenever you're ready, whether it's today or a future meeting, to give staff direction on any possible next steps. COIC has also separately reached out to, I think, both staff and commissioners, just expressing some interest in today's presentation. I believe they are watching. There's a letter that I just handed out that Paula provided today that I'm not sure if you received directly. Just, again, expressing some interest in the discussion and offering to assist if appropriate down the road. So also, Scott Langton, our assessor, I believe, is connected today. If you have questions in terms of the mechanics of how this might work internally, I think Greg Munn, our tax collector, may be online as well. So with that, unless there's questions of me, I will turn it over to Paula.
Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to hear about this program. As Tom mentioned, there is two other people joining me, I believe, on Zoom. And that would be John Eisler, one of our volunteer committee members, and Diane Hodiak, the executive director of 350 Deschutes. So I do know Phil Chang, but for Tony and Patty, I'll just give you a quick background. I've been an environmental consultant in Central Oregon since about 1996, been here since 1991, and actually started off working as the executive director or assistant director at the Ben Recycling Team, which used to handle the county solid waste program. So I was pleased to hear you talking about tipping fees, Tony. I've also worked on renewable energy, sustainable development, and sustainable agriculture. And what I'd like to do now is quickly hand it over to John Eisler, who is joining via Zoom, and let him introduce himself. Are you there, John?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you see me?
Not quite yet.
We see your name.
Perfect. No, I prefer it this way. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, my name is John Eisler. I'm a resident of Redmond, former resident of Bend, native Oregonian, and volunteer on the CPACE committee. I'd like to thank the commissioners, all of you personally, for having us and giving us this chance to present on CPACE. I'm hopeful the more you learn about it, the more you'll like it. I also want to point out that I am an attorney. I'm not here as an attorney. I'm here as a citizen. And so please, everything that my presentation or everything that I say is not intended to be legal advice. Please consult your own counsel. With that, with the introduction, I thought I would just kind of point out real quickly why I believe in CPACE. The first thing is to me, it's kind of like a legislative unicorn. Everybody wins and nobody loses. What I mean by that is I feel like a robust program could really chip away at some of our most challenging collective problems. Paula will speak to that soon. And there really aren't any losers. Taxes aren't going to be raised for people. Nobody has to subsidize this on behalf of the others, like some people feel carbon taxes do. And there are protections in place for those that might be negatively affected. Primary lenders, basically, if they don't like the program, they can opt out. So really, it seems like on paper, at least, everybody wins and nobody loses. Second reason I like this is that the government's role, there's no heavy-handed government here. If they want to, the way they can set it up, they basically just need to set up the infrastructure for it. So, local government can say, yes, we feel like these types of loans provide a significant benefit to the public such that they should receive special treatment. We're going to talk to stakeholders to set this thing up right. We're going to hire the right people to run it. And once that's all done, they basically step back and let the market take care of it itself. And the third reason I really like it is just that I think it's a great fit for Central Oregon for a handful of reasons. And so with that, I'll hand it back to Paula.
Great. We can move to the next slide. Oh, it doesn't come out as pretty. Okay, great. So I'm going to need my glasses. Really quickly, this program was originated by 350 Deschutes, and that's who's behind this program. And our mission is to facilitate a just transition to a clean energy economy. And we are always concerned with the most vulnerable populations. And we're very excited about how this program really merges our mission with economic stimulus and recovery. So our goal right now is working with local governments, business leaders, and volunteers to authorize CPACE. We're here to guide best practices for implementation and administration, building engagement and stakeholder participation. And I know you've been hearing from those people. So we're glad to hear about that. And we're also here and believe in this program because it assists with job creation and diversity in the workforce. And we want to be here to help promote opportunities for affordable multifamily housing, and reducing energy burden for low-income people. And that's what this program does, all by facilitating low-risk, long-term commercial financing for performance and resiliency improvements. What I want to really draw your attention to on this slide, I forgot to tell you next slide.
That's not me.
It's not you?
No, that's not me. We're in trouble if that's
Yeah.
You can tell Scott that. Oh, well.
Sorry about that. But if you look at this slide here, what you'll see is in green, that highlights the states that have adopted or enabled CPACE legislation. And what's exciting about it is it has nothing to do with what we've all become too accustomed to, which is red and blue states. This is hitting everybody across the country, and it's the reason so being is because it really promotes economic recovery as well as sustainability. So we'll just move on to the next slide. I'm waiting for my computer to change. And what's exciting about this is it's only been around since 2008 and started getting implemented in 2009. And you can see that there's just been an exponential J-curve of growth. And really, particularly in the last 5 years, it's exploded. It only got enabled in Oregon in 2015. But now, as we are dealing with a COVID world, we are seeing across the country that this can really stimulate the economy as well as help economies to recover from public health issues. And so this opportunity is available for all Oregon counties and cities. And what it does is it uses the special assessment process. So if we jump to the next slide, it uses the voluntary special assessment process, which we all know is nothing new. The next slide. There we go. In fact, this program has been around for over 200 years, or excuse me, the voluntary special assessment process. It's been around for over 200 years. Ben Franklin is really actually seen as the father of it by developing special fire districts using the tax base. And so, as you probably hope, I'm sure you're well aware, that it's the same thing as a local improvement district. It leverages security through a benefit assessment lien. And it has to have a public good. That's the primary component of a special assessment. It has to be related to public good. And so, in 2008, when this was adopted, what they decided is that improving energy and water conservation is a public benefit. It is the public good. And so all they did was add those two components to the special assessment process, which enables local jurisdictions to use that process for helping to finance environmental, mostly energy conservation, water conservation type projects. So if we go to the next slide, you will see the types of projects that can be covered. And CPACE can cover hard and soft costs for energy efficiency, HVAC improvements, renewable energy, on-site storage, electric vehicle charging, water conservation, seismic hardening, and other public health measures. We can jump to the next slide. These are the sectors that can use CPACE. And let me just back up for a second and say in some states the legislation has been enabled to allow residences to use this program, but in Oregon it's only the commercial sector. And what you might notice, I know that it's hard to read the little industries at the bottom, the sectors on this chart here, but the most successful industry for CPACE use has been the hospitality industry, which we know is the backbone of Central Oregon. But also office, retail, industrial, mixed use, multifamily, healthcare, nonprofits, churches, agriculture, all kinds of industries are learning how to use this process to improve their buildings for efficiency, conservation, and public health, all the while saving money and improving property value. I'm sorry, my mask keeps slipping, but boy, it feels good to talk without it.
I can understand that.
Next slide, please. So the benefits for the building owners are huge. The CPACE loan can allow for up to 100% financing for the building performance and resiliency upgrades. What it does is it transforms a capital expense into a cash flow. So I'll draw your attention to the little chart down on the right. And this is really important to understanding how CPACE is working. So because you're securing that property with that special assessment lien, you're repaying it slowly, but what you've financed is energy savings. And so you see a big gap between what that annual or monthly payment is, depending on how the program is designed, and what the owner sees in their monthly bills. And so the payment is almost always less the payment is almost always less than the savings. Now I say almost always because when you go back to that resiliency piece, and maybe you're financing some seismic hardening, that may not see an energy savings payoff, right? Because there's no savings there. However, the public good and the benefit to making that building safe is huge. And that's, something where you wouldn't see an immediate payoff on the books, but the benefits are huge. Going back down to my third bullet there, CPACE loans are transferable. The loan, because it's on a lien, is attached to the property, not the property owner. So in the case of a sale, the CPACE loan automatically transfers. And then fourth, the weighted average of a CPACE loan overall is less than mezzanine or debt equity. We'll go to the next slide, please. So here you're seeing some examples of the average savings for CPACE projects. And so on average, nationally, building owners are seeing reductions of 13.6% for new buildings and 8.5% for retrofits. On average, they're seeing building value increases of almost 11% for new buildings and almost 7% for retrofits. And the return on investment for new buildings is typically about 10% and about 19.2% for retrofits. And I draw your attention to the image on the right. That is the Neil Kelly headquarters in Portland. And I'm sure you're well aware that Neil Kelly also operates in Central Oregon as well as Eugene. And they are very, very excited to see you guys considering the adoption of CPACE. In fact, I know that Tom sent a letter to you in support of this program. So if we jump to the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about the capital stack and how CPACE works. I have much more information on this because it is a bit of a complex issue, but for now I'd like to just gloss over it, and then if there's specific questions we can dive into at the end. So the one thing that often concerns people when you first learn about CPACE is that it does require that they secure the senior lien. And so they actually take first place in the capital stack. And so what that means, well, it's really nothing to be concerned about. But basically, the reason it is not a concern is because the CPACE loan never accelerates. So it's only the current amount due. And so if there were ever a default, which there's only been less than 1% defaults in the CPACE world thus far, if it were to ever go into default, only the current amount would have to be paid up. The whole loan would never become due in a CPACE loan. And then also it never restricts the senior lender's rights on foreclosure. And as I mentioned, the CPACE loan doesn't accelerate. Now, just the fifth item down there at the bottom, I just wanted to draw your attention to, and that is the fact that some CPACE programs do offer a financing look-back period of up to 2 to 3 years. And so that means that projects can actually be approved for CPACE after the fact. Now, again, that all depends on how CPACE gets adopted here, but some states are really starting to take advantage of that with economic recovery for COVID. So next slide, please. This is just going into a lot more detail about the security for the senior lenders or the primary commercial lender in a CPACE loan. So again, the loan doesn't accelerate, it doesn't restrict a senior lender's foreclosure rights. This third bullet is really important because the CPACE payments can be escrowed. So it doesn't necessarily have to go become a responsibility of the county. A lot of the work that you might see with CPACE can actually be passed on to third-party administration and to the lenders themselves. The interest can be capitalized for up to 24 months. So when a developer is starting a new project or an existing building owner is diving into CPACE, they can actually capitalize that project for up to 24 months, which makes it a lot more affordable and easy for them to do that, to do the improvements. And also there's an ample cure period, just in case there is a lag in payments. There's a lot of effort to get everybody current so that nothing goes into default. And then item number 6, again, that goes back to that operational building savings. Typically, the savings is going to be more than the annual or monthly payments, and it's also almost certain to increase the property values. And then for banks, CPACE does help them to win deals and build relationships. Next slide, please. This just gives you an idea of the CPACE financial flow. So again, the property secured by a lien, the mortgage holder is going to provide, has to give consent for the CPACE loan to take effect. The property owner is going to be making the payments and doing the improvements, and then either the tax authority can be collecting and remitting payments, or that can be passed on to the third party. So that's essentially how this is working. We'll go to the next slide, please. And you can see here just some of the public benefits that are associated with adopting a CPACE program. The property owners who participate will enjoy decreased operating costs and increased asset value. Both business and residential tenants may enjoy lower energy costs. Now, unlike most loans, the CPACE savings can be passed on to the tenants, and that's what we're certainly hoping to see with this program. And then what we all know is that workforce productivity increases in buildings that are better than code because they're more comfortable, they're healthier, the air quality is better, and people tend to have less sick days. Also, the energy burden and debt relief for low-income people can be significantly reduced if we start using CPACE on affordable housing. And then item number 6, it does stimulate sustainable and economic growth as well as community resiliency. So let's jump to the next slide. How does this benefit Deschutes County? Well, again, this can really help with economic recovery. We can create opportunities for private financing for local business improvements. We can be creating jobs, lower building operating costs, and again, increasing property values and the tax base, because if we have more valuable properties, the tax base can be higher. Next slide, please. It also mitigates growth impacts. Just some of the things that you were talking about earlier today. When we have a huge demand for growth, we also have a huge demand for infrastructure. But if we're doing that sustainably and we're reducing energy and water demand, then we're also reducing the need for the systems to support those. And that can be huge. We're also helping to achieve energy and water conservation goals, reducing pollution related from building use, and also reducing building-related emissions. Next slide, please. So the resiliency and the health measures. At this point, what's clear is HVAC, which that stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, forgetting my lingo here, as well as air filtration. These issues are going to be, it's really going to be important for buildings to start improving their air quality. And CPACE can really help them to do that. It can also help to retrofit with touchless HVAC controls and plumbing fixtures. And what we do know is that there are opportunities to expand the resiliency component. Every state has adopted CPACE different, and even within the same state, some counties do it differently. So expansion to the resiliency component might have to be legislated, but there are those that believe that we might be able to expand some of the resiliency components as they are now. The last example down there at the bottom shows what Washington State has included for their resiliency component. And again, a lot of that relates to the issue that you were talking about previously. But what they've done is they've included fire suppression. They've also included flood mitigation, stormwater management, wildfire, and wind resistance. The other items are included in our existing enabling legislation from Oregon. So I think, to me, that's exciting, the potential that we have with this. Next slide, please. So this is about the status of CPACE in Oregon. And Multnomah County adopted CPACE in 2015. They're the only county thus far to do it. There is a statewide administrative effort that started in November 2020. This point includes Corvallis and Benton County, Eugene and Lane County, Beaverton and Washington County, and Cassie Lacey from Bend has also been participating. What we do know is this is a slow-moving effort. Most programs take about 3 years to get a statewide administrative system. So, and you, Tony, I feel like I might have not made myself clear here. When I say the statewide effort, it's just for the administrative component. And we could, even if there is a statewide administrative system that does get adopted 2-3 years down the road, it doesn't change our ability to have our own administrative system. And in fact, we're learning that what we do here could become a statewide administrative system. It could be adopted because, and we'll get into this, actually John is going to pick up the baton here in a second, but it could be that we create a program that other counties are able to adopt into. And the counties that opt in to a CPACE program do not have to be adjacent. So we could adopt something and then Douglas County decides that they, we work with them. So I think that's super duper exciting. But of course, we're going to focus on Central Oregon, and Jefferson County will be our next, the next county that we hope to get on board with this.
So question, counties are the level of government that needs to do this? I mean, a city wouldn't have the authority because they don't manage.
A city can adopt the program, but then they have to work with the county to get it implemented and put together. But
implemented at a county level.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good question.
Okay.
Okay.
My understanding is that there had been some discussions with the city of Redmond about this, and that's what they said back was, well, you should just adopt this at the county level because we have to work with the assessor and the tax collector to implement this anyway. So even if we're supportive, the county will, the county has to accept a role in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you should have received letters of support from both the city of Bend and the city of Redmond.
Yes, it's on packet page 40 in our,
Yeah.
Yeah.
we have the letter
Great.
from Mayor Endicott and John Bullock.
Okay, at this point, I would like to hand it over to John Eisler. Are you ready to grab the baton, John?
I'm ready if you can still hear me.
We can.
All right, great. So my intent here is just to kind of run you through the statutes as far as what Oregon enacted, mostly just a copy and paste of what's in the statute. So CPACE in Oregon is codified in section 680 and 685 or 223. 685 only deals with the seismic rehabilitation. It's almost identical to 680, except for things like Paula mentioned about how seismic rehabilitation won't pay itself back with the savings. The way the statute's written, it seems like it provides a great deal of flexibility for how the local government wants to adopt the CPACE program. As Paula mentioned before, that Washington is adding resiliency components. I would refer you to County Council on the propriety of that before the state legislation is changed. Next slide, please. And I can't see which slide you're on, but for the process for CPACE adoption, as we just talked about, tax collecting municipalities to pass these local ordinances. She talked about the state administration. They can be financed by third-party lenders or by revenue bonds by the local government itself. It's a good idea to create a committee for stakeholder input. And I would also do the same on the opt-in option for other counties. Please refer to your county council. Next slide, please. So this is what the statutes require the local government to do. And these are kind of not in the best order, but before any of these loans can be approved, they have to be signed off by the local governments. That's one of the requirements. A second requirement is that, as the county is considering adopting this, if it went, through an ordinance process or whatever means it goes through, it would need to notify all the utilities serving the area, water, electricity, that kind of thing. The loan amount in itself must be in a principal sufficient to pay the cost of the improvements, the cost of the audit, if any, and the cost and reserves of the program. So basically, the loan has to be enough so there's no money out of pocket, and the loan pays for everything. And the fourth requirement is that before the loan can be approved, the landowner has to give notice to all the lenders on record, and those lenders have to send back written approval that they're okay with going into a PACE program. So they're protected right there. Next slide, please.
Go ahead and read the title of the slide you're going to speak to, because that'll help us know which one we're going to be on here.
I appreciate that. So this one
got lost, John.
On our feed, we're 1 or 2 slides ahead right now.
We got lost. Sorry.
Can we rewind?
This slide, it's slide 21. How CPACE could work for Deschutes County.
Okay, we got ahead of you. I apologize.
That's the one, right there.
That's okay. So and this has been discussed before. Basically, the government can run it itself, or they can hire a third-party administrator. From what I know, it seems like almost all governments prefer the latter. This makes it easier. Governments have enough going on to outsource to someone who really knows what they're doing and can run an effective program. You have your choice on which improvements you consider eligible. You can, just do the energy efficiency, water type solutions, or you can add in the seismic rehabilitation. Next slide for utilities improvements. So these are permissive. The first one is to require an energy or water audit before approving the loan. This is permissive, but I would say this is probably highly recommended so they can see what the improvements are going to be and make sure that it's going to be cost effective over the life of the loan, which kind of leads into the next permissive section. And the third is it says you basically have your choice to impose financing conditions sufficient to ensure timely repayment. Next slide. Kind of touched on this. The government can either do the loan itself through revenue bonds, or they can, like I said, bring in third-party lenders to work with the third-party administrator. If the local government does make the loan, they can charge enough to make sure that it pays for the program. There's also the option to get loans to the Department of Energy, but that kind of changes some of the other parameters here. Next slide, security and enforcement. Excuse me. The local government, it says, may secure the loan or financing in any manner it deems reasonable, and also provide some enumerated choices of securing it with a lien and the same priority. So a super lien, it's an assessment lien for local improvements, and that can be enforced as collected, just like other local improvements, or certified to the county assessor. And I think that's it for my part. Thank you, Paula.
Yes, thank you. I'm hoping you'll be able to stay on board for questions. We're almost wrapped up here. So if we go to the next slide, thank you so much. So this just is giving you an example of the CPACE benefits from 2019, and I'm excited to hear what happened in 2020 because we know that growth was even more. But over 2,500 commercial projects have been completed, over 24,000 job years created, almost $3 billion in economic output, and almost $8 billion in kilowatt hours in energy saved, and 2.85 million metric tons of carbon abated, and that's huge. So what we ask is that you please consider adopting a CPACE ordinance for Deschutes County. Let's share that success to our community and our commercial property owners here. So thank you for listening, and we really look forward to your questions.
Great, and thank you very much for the backup information. In fact, yeah, you and I had kind of gone over these slides a little bit, and I can see some of the real technical loan process stuff got put in the connections or the pages behind this. So, questions?
I can start if nobody else is ready yet. My first question is about what financing this is an alternative to. So, you're a building owner, you want to do some building improvements, energy related or otherwise, you have certain kinds of financing opportunities. Why would you pursue this pathway as opposed to some other form of financing?
That is a great question. I'm super pleased you asked that, Phil. I got to figure out which slide would, okay. So if you go to the supplemental questions and you get to one titled CPACE compared to other financing, it's towards the end. So it's like, yay. All right, so Phil, what often happens when building owners are trying to do a renewable energy or conservation project, it gets value engineered out because oftentimes that payback period is a lot, for a traditional loan, is much shorter than a CPACE loan. A CPACE loan can be amortized for 20 to 30 years, and it's usually correlated with the lifetime payback of the project. And so if we look at this chart here that's on the screen right now, the right-hand column is property fit. That represents Multnomah County's program. That's what they named it. And so that is comparing a bank finance program or project versus owner funding. And so this particular example here is a $350,000 project. And you can look at a lot of different comparables here, but what I'd like to draw your attention to is the cash flow where those two arrows are on the left-hand side. So if you look at an owner-funded project in year one, the cash out of pocket for that developer or building owner is $310,000 out of pocket. Versus a bank finance loan, they're going to be out about $51,000 out of pocket. With a CPACE loan, in this example, that same property owner is actually $12,621 cash flow positive. And then if you look at cash flow year two, again, look at those comparables, $270,000 out of pocket for financed out of pocket, $32,000 out of pocket for a bank finance program, and your cash flow positive $25,000 with a CPACE loan. Now, while you're seeing that if you go back up to the interest rate, the property fit is a little bit, or the CPACE loan is a little bit higher of an interest rate than a bank finance loan. But again, if we go to where you're talking about, it's that oftentimes these energy efficiency and renewables are engineered out, you have to get separate financing. Oftentimes, you'll find that, say, well, I didn't describe that well. So if you go to the next slide down, so let's say I'm going to do a project, right? And I'm a developer, I'm going to go for a new loan, a new project, and my lender is only going to lend me 70% of the project, of the money I need for this project. Where am I going to come up with the rest of the money? And actually, let's see. Oh, it's probably not the best. So where am I going to get the rest of that money? Well, usually what they call, I'm going to have to go to the private market. I'm going to have to get a private lender. I'm somewhere going to have to get private equity, which is oftentimes referred to as mezzanine debt. And so if you look at these two examples on the screen, with a CPACE loan, I'm only going to need about $500,000 of equity in my project. And I'm going to use CPACE instead of using the private market for my loan. And oftentimes, that private market loan is going to come at a 10 to 12% rate versus a CPACE loan. Although it's more than your traditional commercial loan, it's much less than a private loan. And so with the CPACE example on the right, the property fit example, you'll see that I'm only needing $500,000 out of pocket for my equity, or I should say I only need about $500,000 of equity, and I don't need any mezzanine debt. I'm at $2.5 million for CPACE. But if I was not using CPACE, I would have to find $2 million from a private lender that's charging me 10 to 12%, and maybe my loan is only good for 5 to 7 years. And so I might not even be able to put my solar panels up because they get engineered out of the project because it doesn't pay back within that 6 to 7 year time period. So those are a couple of reasons why. Did that help address the question, Phil?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I have a question then. The example above that, you actually had, the example you gave, your interest rate is showing to be higher than the bank financed rate. So you're saying it could flip either way.
So all right, let's see, can we go to the previous slide? Is this the one you're talking about, Commissioner Adair?
Well, I hope, I don't see it. Okay, yeah, that one, yes.
That
'cause
one.
that one is at 6%.
Yes.
And you said, well, it's at a higher rate there, but then down below you're saying, well, it's at a lower rate.
Right.
I can definitely understand
I
the
see
projects,
why
what they're doing.
it's confused, because these two slides are not apples and apples.
Okay,
And so what this is showing is a project, the middle project, they're saying, so with your commercial loan financing, so if I'm financing my project, it's probably going to be at about 4.5%. I have a good relationship with my banker, right? But he's only going to cover, or she is only going to cover 60 to 70% of my loan. Somewhere I have to come up with that 30% of gap capital. And so I might have to hit the private market to hit that, to get the rest of my money. And that's where I'm going to be paying most likely in the 10 to 12% interest rate.
and you're talking today's rates then?
This is theoretical and example, but it relates to whatever the market is.
Okay.
It will fluctuate with the market just like anything else, but it would still stay relatively comparable.
Paula, if I can just chime in real quick.
Please.
One of the main differences, sure. I think I can't see the slide, but I imagine the low interest rate is for the primary loan that's typically in first position on the lien priority, and the second loans, the private loans, would then be subordinate to that primary loan, shorter duration, higher interest rate. So I think you're talking about two different loans there. What PACE does is it jumps both of those, and then would they be in first position?
Does that help, Patty? Commissioner Adair?
Right, yeah.
Sorry.
Sure, no problem.
Didn't mean to be so informal. Any other questions?
Well, so some acknowledgements. So this is a program that ends up on the tax bill. It's an annual tax bill statement payment for a period amount of time. And then it talked about possibly escrow, so there's a monthly payment. So it's really an annual payment that might be escrowed, correct?
Depending on how it's adopted, Commissioner DeBonne, it really can be rolled out to how it makes most sense for our community. So the beautiful process, and I thought I had it on a slide, but apparently I forgot to throw it in there, is that what's really critical about CPACE is during the implementation process, you really want to engage stakeholders, and that's what we've made a huge effort to do. I know you've heard from real estate folks, I know you've heard from developers, you've heard from citizens. We even have some financiers that are involved in this. And so you're looking at what's happening across the country, and you're taking our professional industry stakeholders, and you're saying, how can this work best for us with our local government? And some governments have said, we don't want to be involved in the collection process. We don't want to do that at all. So they adopt it differently. Some of them sign off the collection of the payments to the mortgage holders. So we really can evolve this how we want. And what's really wonderful is that so many different local municipalities and counties have adopted this across the country, and they're excited to help us. I know that I inundated you with information of best practices, but that's because there are many different ways to adopt it, and depending on the economics of different areas, they've all adopted it differently.
Well, and it still boils down to an annual line item on the tax bill associated with that property, principal plus interest, one line item. And so that's it's never been done before here. I mean, you're showing examples around the country. It's federally legislated and authorized. So that's the step, though, is to accept that responsibility. Even if we have another third party do it, if it's put on the tax bill at the county level, I'm just saying, that's a big step, you know. So, and we've got our assessor, and I know the treasurer is listening too. Yeah, Scott, if you have any thoughts. And, you know, my thought is we need to study what this is, but I think that's what it is. It's going to be a line item on the tax bill.
Yeah,
Good afternoon.
I would love to hear.
Scott Langton, County Assessor, and yeah, there's a lot to this program. I can only speak to the portion as far as the collection mechanism through the property tax bill. So I would just caution and recommend, if we go down this path, that as always, the devil's in the detail, and as you know, Oregon has a really bizarre, complex property tax system. And if you look at the property tax bill, the whole system was designed on basically, with very few exceptions, this would be another exception, but there are some already. Everything on that property tax bill is voter approved, and it's a tax per the value. This is an amount that goes on. So you have Department of Forestry, their fire patrol surcharge is a fee that goes on. Jurisdictions can put delinquent sewer charges on. And with that, that I think it'd be important we work really closely with the proponents and whoever is overseeing this, because, and I'll use the example of City of Bend on their delinquent sewer. They used the property tax system for a few years and then decided not to because of just limitations the system creates because of the way it's designed. The two big ones, I won't go into a lot of detail, but the two big ones are, this won't be really treated any different than a taxing district. So you guys go through the budget process and whatnot. You have to certify to my office by July 15th what tax rate you want. Well, in this case, they certify by July 15th what dollar amounts on which accounts. And then that's not billed until October, not due till November. If the property sells in the meantime, sometimes the condition of a sale is any outstanding liens have to be paid off. Well, you get in this no man's land here where it's still going to show up on the tax statement. So you have to work out those details, not that
They're
we can't,
prorated.
there's just some things. And then when it shows up on the tax statement, even though on your tax statement you see you're paying this much to Deschutes County, this much to the sheriff, this much to Oregon Department of Forestry, when it hits Greg Munn's office, it loses that identity. That it's now a percentage of the unsegregated total of the tax account. So this would just be another line item on that. So then if a lender wants to tie that dollar to dollar directly back to a property, the system doesn't allow for that. Yeah, that's one limitation that I know, and I think it was probably about 5-6 years ago when Multnomah was looking at, we had some conversations here at the county. And now, at that point, the people wanting it, or at least lenders, that wasn't workable for them. It very well could be now. I just want to make sure everybody understands those limitations. That dollar amount's also eligible for a 3% discount. It'll accrue delinquent interest at the same
Which
rate.
You'd have to calculate that into the whole thing.
Yeah, and so it's just, so that, I won't go into more detail, but just devil's in the detail on that.
Yeah.
So if we're gonna proceed on this, I'd really strongly encourage that, that the tax office and my office works very closely on making sure the nuances are worked out and all the parties understand, so at the end of the day, people go, I didn't know it worked that way.
Can I ask, how can I learn more, like what statutes would I look at so I can learn more about that to help troubleshoot and see if I can help get some expert eyes on that of counties that have dealt with this before?
But it'd only be Multnomah and Oregon, because in Oregon, every state does things differently. And we have a unique tax system here. I'll give you one of my cards, or we can get
That'd be
together and
great.
I'll go through it with you. But it's really no different than other taxing districts on the way this works.
And have you followed what they did in Multnomah?
Not real closely. I think there's less about the property tax, but I'm not sure which nuances they got around it. But that's the reason I wanted to come down and just to make sure that people understood there's some limitations. It's not as straightforward because of the way the property tax system works.
And those tax statements, I know through our dial system, you can get a tax statement from any property. I wonder if Multnomah has some of that kind of, publicly accessible information. Because then just pulling one of those would be interesting, that has a project, a CPACE project, to see what that line item looks like. So,
Yeah, well, that's the easy part. Because if they said, it's like Department of Forestry, their charge. They say,
oh, yeah.
hey, put $65 on Scott Langton's account, and we do that. It's just now, and you see that on the property tax bill, it's just when you follow that dollar through, it becomes a percent of a total.
Well, that'd be the reference to say, okay, how did this
Yeah.
number come? And then you could just run with it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, and
then
it's
how it's
similar with
distributed.
mosquito abatement as well, because you've got that for Sun River where that's a part of your tax district.
Correct, but then you don't get, typically a lender is going to be looking at, I want to see that $1,000 charge I put on Jane Doe's property, I'm getting that $1,000 back. You might have 50 of these programs. You're not going to see who paid what. It loses its identity entirely. You're just going to get a chunk of money. So you don't know if Jane Doe paid and Bob Smith didn't, and it might not, you might not care. A lender may or may not. That's where devil's in the detail, that we need to map this through and work it out because of those limitations on the way our state system works.
well, and then also,
If I could ask, because of the unsegregated nature, though, if there is a default, all the other districts are underwriting the cost of that default? Because the CPACE is still getting their payment.
Yeah, it's no different than any other district that if somebody doesn't pay their property tax, that's just in the collection percentage for all districts. And there's also the delinquent interest that's charged on that. At what point then in the third year, it'll start in foreclosure process. Fifth year, it will be foreclosed on. And then, of course, it's Greg Munn's and Dave's office that are working through that process, and then the sheriff auctioning off the property. And there is some advantage I see, because we are a first-place lien holder with the property tax bill. So that is a secured debt, but depending on the year and the amounts and everything, then that's where that collection percent comes in. And that 3% discount's part of that as well.
Well, and then one of my thoughts as it was being discussed is it's that first 2 projects. You know, I mean, there may be a lot of effort to get this system built for those first 2 projects. You know, when there's 50 of them and there's a critical mass, but, oh, man, there may be a huge, learning curve just to get into that first project.
Well, and that goes outside of my wheelhouse, but that'd be more into who is the oversight, how is that done, who certifies it to my office.
Which could be quite a few decisions made by the Board of Commissioners to put direction to it, and then staff to figure out how to really implement it. And then if it's going external, how are you going to double check? I'm just thinking out loud here, but could be a lot involved.
Yes, and that's exactly why one of the first entities that we went to in introducing this was Central Oregon Intergovernmental Council for the relationships and the knowledge of what they do. And they're very, very interested. They are, not committed to, but certainly exploring the idea of potentially being an administrator, and you should have received a letter to that effect. But either way, they want to help with seeing if we can get this through Deschutes County and our neighboring counties. And what a lot of the things that you're alluding to or bringing to our attention are things that are often done within the third-party administrative system. So I'm hoping that in working together, we can figure out how to best deal with that. And I'll make one other point to that and then see if John or Diane have anything to add. But Tony, you mentioned the first few projects are going to be a learning experience. And the reality is that's how it's going to start off, is very, very slow. We'll have a few projects that are able to take advantage of this, and that will be a good opportunity to really see what we might need to adapt in the future. And so one of the things that administrators across the country highly recommend is that you keep that stakeholder committee involved and meet at least annually to say, are there any things that we need to revisit with this program? But really that when the legislation or the ordinance is written, it be a little bit looser, and that more of those details that we're trying to hash out here go into the program guidelines that is happening with staff and with this administrator. God willing, we get COIC, who is such a trusted and valued third party. It really creates a good opportunity to have something cohesive and that will stand the test of time, because we will build it to be adaptable, build it to work within our systems and for our community, our property owners and our community members. So with that, real quick, does John or Diane have anything to add?
This is John. I'll just add, regarding foreclosure process, obviously that needs to be accounted for, but it would be rare, I would think, that one of these delinquencies would make it all the way through the tax foreclosure process, just because those other liens are still there and the pace lien doesn't accelerate. So those guys that were in first or second position, instead of being wiped out, they would just need to come up with what the balance owing is in order to save the property. So you'd think they would, the financial incentive would be there, especially if things are structured properly, to make sure that it never goes that far down the road.
And I guess I just might add real quick, if I could, that would be, it loses its identity in the foreclosure process as well. There's just outstanding taxes. It doesn't matter why they're outstanding, it's lumped in with all the other districts. So that's very true. Oftentimes lenders will step in because they've got there's enough equity there that they don't want to lose that property to foreclosure. But yeah, and that's just things that we can map out. This isn't insolvable. I just want to make sure there's no surprises at the end of the road, and that the lenders and you and everybody else knows that here's the outcome at the end of the day, and if that's something that's desirable, then we make that work, but I don't want to be a surprise.
Yeah. No, I would recommend that the CPACE proponents meet with the assessor and the treasurer to talk, to really understand all the intricacies of the administration of assessment and tax collections, so we could understand how to make this work, how it would fit within our existing structure, and how it would fit and not create all sorts of administrative headaches and burdens for in places that we don't want them to be, because this is, to me, this sounds like a potentially very exciting opportunity to provide another financing option for people who want to, make good investments in property, in commercial buildings in Deschutes County. So that's, it does sound like it's something that's worth exploring, but we would want to make sure that the impacts and burdens and the startup costs aren't so great that it's a deal killer.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is it might be good to have whoever the is holding the loan at the table as well, to make sure that they understand how that dollar's traced through, to make sure that's worked. Because that seemed to be the hiccup, what is it, 5-6 years ago, we had the conversation before. They might have overcome that hurdle, but at that point it was, they wanted a more direct one-to-one relationship to that property dollar amount.
Paula, I do have a question. So you've been in Multnomah County since 2015. How many different projects are using this financing then?
In Multnomah County, they, at this point, only have 4. And they really only, that's when they started putting things together and administering the program. And so I believe their first project launched in 2018, but don't hold me to that. Part of the reason we have looked more across the country than at Portland is because we know we're a different animal than the West Side. And so we've been looking at economies that are more similar to our rural economy. And then also, they've learned, and we've learned through them, that some of the things that they did are more restrictive and are not as inviting to the lenders, and have made it more challenging for their program participation. And for some reason, I am just drawing a blank, and it should be at the top of my head, but I'm trying to think of some of the bigger setbacks. Well, first of all, their fees were, their administrative fees were set too high, and I know they're trying to draw back on them. I believe they also had some challenges with trying to set certain limits for diversity, equity, and inclusion, whereas our goal with diversity and equity and inclusion is really to make sure that there's awareness and access to the trainings and the certifications that are required for people within the construction industry to work on these projects, so that everybody has the opportunity. We feel this is more achievable than setting specific goals. So we want to help facilitate that as a part of what 350 Deschutes does anyway, and that's neither here nor there with CPACE, but it certainly does tie in. So those are the two things that come to mind. Diane, can you help me out, or John, is there other things that you can think of that make Portland more restrictive?
I can. Go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, and Paula, correct me if I'm wrong, I was under the impression that I think Multnomah County's program is limited to a discrete geographical area. It's not the whole county. It's just I think a district within Portland. Is that still true?
I thought it was the whole county. Diane?
No, it's the whole county.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
But also, I will say that Multnomah County had a lot of things that they went to the legislature, they passed certain things, and then they went back to the legislature and passed certain things. So I think that they've been working through a lot of the glitches as they've gone ahead with this. So that may be a factor. But I guess the main thing I wanted to comment on was that I think that these are all questions that really relate to administration, which is probably the most complicated piece of this program. And that is why Paula has, in all the work that she's done, she's identified 3 steps. The first step would be the enablement of the CPACE program itself at the county level. And I'm not sure if the intergovernmental agreement would come next, but that's certainly a piece of it. But the other piece, which is the piece that we're really talking about here, which is the most complex piece, and the piece that Paula has assembled a stakeholder group that does include a lot of these stakeholders that we're talking about, lenders that do have an option of setting up payment programs that could perhaps go directly from the buyer to the lender, where the money doesn't even have to touch anyone else's hands. So to alleviate some of those problems with collecting those funds. But those are all administrative questions. And so I would encourage you, we're working on this to, as you know, we're in this for the long haul. We want to see it throughout Central Oregon. Meyer Memorial Trust is behind us and trying to do this. We want to do it the right way so that it has a good reputation. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and move on the enablement, and then move to either step 2 or 3 when we can actually answer some of those questions, because those aren't going to be answered overnight, certainly. And that's a point where all of you hopefully will still stay involved and give your feedback so that we can set this up in the best way possible for everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. And just to bring it back to your question, Commissioner Adair, most programs do start off a little slow, and then once they get implemented, they really can take off. And it really has to do with bringing these stakeholders together, including government and tax collectors, and making sure that we're doing it right to be effective. But Colorado has been one state, I believe they've already had over 80 projects in Colorado. Missouri has also taken off really, really well. So we're looking at those programs that are doing it well, and again, bringing about those best practices.
So a couple thoughts. You mentioned COIC. Please be careful, because COIC is our Council of Governments. And Scott Aycock wrote a letter saying, please note that we're not lobbying our member organizations, because, I mean, they're there for us, and so they don't have funds to manage something like this, so they would need to build a program that has the overhead built into it. But that would be a policy of Deschutes County asking COIC to be involved. So, as I say, it'd be inappropriate for you to advocate to us that COIC wants this program. I'm just pointing that out.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
For us, but, I mean, if I could
keep me straight, okay? Sorry about that.
I could also just respond real briefly to Diane. I understand the kind of the desire to kind of enable, like get it on the books and then figure our stuff out later. But the challenge is that assessment and tax collection are actually core functions of Deschutes County. That's our operations. That's part of our job. And so I, as a commissioner, I would want to know that this can be set up in a way that it doesn't cause a lot of administrative challenges and grief for our assessor and for our treasurer before I would want to vote to enable something like this.
Just coming back to, I understand that's certainly a great point, Commissioner Chang. And Commissioner DeBonne, I do also, just on the costs, if I wasn't clear before, the way that the administrators do get paid is through the funding of programs. And so typically an administrative fees for doing a loan is usually somewhere between 1% and some are as high as, I think I've seen them as high as 3.25%. We know that those lower fees are really critical to making sure that projects happen. but it does create that challenge that there is funding needed to get the program started, because you don't recoup any of your fees until you get a project finance and somebody pays a fee. So you're right about that. And some programs even, they charge a initiation fee, and then they also might charge an annual assessment fee that comes towards helping pay for these costs. And government is also allowed to bill for any of those costs. We're not saying we want to see a program adopted with a lot of fees and stuff in place, but we do understand that there are costs involved in setting this up and in administering it, but it shouldn't come out of the pockets of government once we get an ordinance passed. I think that's really, really critical to understand.
Great. Well, my thought is at this time is finding lender information, as in the projects that were funded in Multnomah County, and what is a bank's point of view on something like this, or whatever funding organizations are. I say banks, could be anybody. So that would be a starting point for more information, and kind of want to leave it there for today. It's educational at this time. There's been an ask for enabling or whatever the terminology might be, but I am not ready for that.
If I can add just real quick, I appreciate your comments, Commissioner Chang. The mechanics of actually somebody certifying like a delinquent sewer charge and me putting it on the tax roll and then our treasurer collecting it, we already do that. So that's not a lot of extra work. It's the way the system works, and with people not understanding that, then the end result isn't what they wanted or desired. And that's what we've found with the city of Benton on their delinquent sewer. So as long as the lenders and everybody are okay with this, now you've got the whole other administrative piece that's outside of whatever they certify to me and how that works. But I just wanted to make sure I was clear as far as that. But before you got down that road, we could definitely walk through that as far as is that acceptable to the lender? And I think that's been the big hurdle, as I said before.
So when you're talking about our traditional lenders who are doing a mortgage lender versus a C-PACE lender is who you're looking to hear from?
Well, whoever the treasurer is going to be mailing that check to annually that says that this debt.
So, yeah, in the presentation, it talks about, the local jurisdiction could do some bonding or funding for it. I'm not there yet, absolutely not there yet, even if that's going to be a solution in the future. So then there's going to be a third party, somebody, as I say, I don't know if it's a bank or, whoever has the capital that they would put into this system. So I'd love to just learn about that, who would be a partner that would provide dollars into this system unless we didn't bond for it or whatever the
So
other options
what
are.
I'm understanding then, what I'm understanding from you, Commissioner Damone, is you'd like to hear from the C-PACE lenders, the folks that would loan on these projects.
Yeah.
But I think what I'm hearing from Scott is that you would like to hear from our local commercial lenders, how are they going to feel about that? Or did I misunderstand you?
Whoever's holding because at the end of the day, then our treasurer is going to be, through the property tax system, cutting a check like they do to Deschutes County or the sheriff or the library. They're going to be cutting a check through a distribution at different points in the year based on collections to this entity or these entities.
So you want to
And
hear?
do those entities understand the limitations of Oregon property tax, and does that work for this program? And at least when we had the conversation several years back, that's where they stepped back and said, no, that doesn't work at all. Like I say, that might not be an issue today, but it was then.
This is Diane again. Would it make sense just so, and Paula, maybe you have a better understanding of this than I do, but would it make sense for us to, because we have a whole list of lenders that are interested in doing C-PACE projects in Oregon. And we do have lenders that we're working with now. Would it make sense for us to answer some of the questions that you have, Scott, and that the commissioners have, And should we do another work session, or how would you like us to get that information to you? What would be the best process?
My thought is there a commissioner interested in following up on this? Are you, Commissioner? I mean, so, so it could be one commissioner meeting kind of thing, and then bring it back however we want to bring it back. Either it's at a meeting like this or a report to the commission.
To try to get a substantial number of these questions answered and kind of sorted out and the information organized, and then bring it back. Yeah?
Yeah, I mean, because that could be, with staff too, because then you'd say, okay, according to, assessor, treasurer, administration, this is the cause and effect to Deschutes County operations. So one of my thoughts is, even if there's a 1% to 3% charge, obviously the administrator might want that. But are we just pushing a button at Deschutes County, or are we having to take a little extra time from the assessors to the treasurer's office? So then there's another, hidden fee or just overhead of commitment.
What I've often
just some
seen
analysis
is
like
a
that.
$50 fee is what I don't know what the costs are, but that's something I've seen before in examples where
and
they
it
might.
costs us hundreds and thousands of dollars to roll the system here. Any billable hour could be hundreds of dollars or whatever. So if it's just staff time by any estimate, I don't know why I'm just throwing out the.
Well, it is fascinating that they've only had 4 projects in Multnomah County, and I believe they have 9 senators from Multnomah County, and if they need to keep reworking it in order to fit there, I really want to know more about it.
Yeah.
So, I get the energy bill savings. My son, that's what he does. He does it for Facebook. That's his business. He's always talking to me, and he's always changing my light bulbs. So I get the savings, not because they never last 20 years like he tells me, but I totally get it. But yet again, I feel like there's a lot of things we need to know here. If Scott said it was a problem before, I really want to be sure that we know what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's call it for today. You've got one commissioner, and as I say, I spoke to you before this too, so we're available to communicate. But a little bit more, take it a little bit more down the path of the business of the county at this time. And a lender.
Great.
We've identified a bunch of questions
Yeah.
today. We can dig into them, and we can bring information back.
So
And I'd be happy to
You'll be
kind of
the
work with you
lead?
offline, basically.
okay,
on
so
that.
I'll follow up with you, Phil.
Yeah, and one of the first things I'm going to want to do is get us all together with Scott and Greg Munn and sort through some of the
And we'll-
questions that they have identified.
We'll bring some lenders, and by the way, although there are specific CPACE lenders, any lender can apply to be a CPACE lender. So we can and that's what some local banks have done.
Well, that'd be interesting. I mean, is there a local bank that's interested in this? From their point of view, does it look like is an advantage?
Well, guess what I'm going to do?
Yeah, we'll go ask them.
I'm going to go call.
Good.
Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to look at this. We definitely will get these answers to the questions and work with Phil, and we're confident that we will figure out the right path for us to make this happen here, and appreciate the time.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Paula.
Commissioners.
Yes, have a great day, everyone.
Thanks.
At this time, item number 3, both of those took a good hour, but we're getting there. Consideration of board acceptance of a mini grant. Barrett Flesh. Hello.
Hi, can you see me?
Yes.
Great. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nice to see you all. I'm Barrett Flush, for the record, the Program Manager for Deschutes County Outpatient Behavioral Health. And I am here today with a little bit of mea culpa. We applied for a mini grant without getting approval from the board beforehand. And I'll explain why that happened. Normally, we do know that we need approval for grants before we apply for them. In this case, Molly Wells Darling was moving into the incident command for critical incidents for the COVID response. And she was transferring the piece to me, and I was not aware that she had not submitted for the approval, and I didn't look for the approval, and we missed it, basically. So all apologies for that. In the meantime, it's a mini grant with the Central Oregon Health Council. It was requesting $4,847.25. And many grants are provided by the Central Oregon Health Council in alignment with some of the regional health improvement plans and how we can improve the health of constituents in Deschutes County and our clients within behavioral health. So we applied for the grant. The grant is called Move for Better Health. The grant was actually approved by the Health Council. So today we are here looking for acceptance from you to move forward. We have not received any funding. We've put that on hold until we have approval from you. And in essence, you can read the description in there, but we're really looking at people with serious and persistent mental illness who also have physical health issues. And this works towards integration of better whole health. And so we're looking at A1C, high blood sugar, hypertension, high blood pressure. Movement is something that really makes a difference in our integrated work with Mosaic Medical downtown and at Courtney. We're working with the medical professionals there and with our behavioral health professionals to put it together. And we came up with the proposal of getting some Fitbits, some pedometers, some cuffs, basically to monitor our clients and motivate them to move. And they would participate in groups a few times a week with other peers and other staff to help support them in that movement. We would use the data that we received from the Fitbits to work with their primary care provider to be able to monitor their health. And we're basically doing this as a 3-month pilot to look at the effects of change in using movement with this particular population of clients to help support their health. The cost for the grant, as I said, is just under $5,000. There's no cost to the county. It is an exclusive grant to pay for those devices. The monitoring, the work we do is already work that we do with our clients, so there's no additional cost. So in essence, that's it, with outcomes looking at increased movement by the participants, engagement with their primary care and behavioral health providers, and better whole health dietary stuff, all of that good stuff. So it's a 3-month grant. We've also talked to Fitbit about providing future grants for us as a health department, and they are considering it. They have an application process for that, so we have a sustainability path. So basically, we're looking for your approval today.
So as we sit here for hours on end, we're discussing the Move for Better Health grant.
Yes, this really
Yeah,
makes
right.
you feel badly. Okay, but the really good news is that this is so critical, and the COVID numbers, what is it, over 50% of COVID fatalities have been obese, and diabetes is another serious issue. So I hope this is great. I hope we can get a big grant from Fitbit in the future. Getting people moving is perfect. We've got better weather, so thank you, Barrett. I see you all the time on our behavioral health meetings, so I know it was only a matter of Molly was going one way and you picked it up, but thank you for pointing it out. Sure. So I move consideration of board acceptance of Central Oregon Health Council's mini grant Move for Better Health, and it's in the amount of $4,847.25.
I'll second.
Okay, well, and for discussion, thanks for following up with us at the board level for these grants. So I think of it as 2 reasons for reviewing grants at this level. One of them is the grant commitments we might be making, as in let's keep track of what we've applied for, what we're supposed to report on, acknowledging whoever the grant provider is gets what they need for that grant. So and this was part of our annual audit years ago too, not knowing sometimes where our grants were. So that's the business case of it. But then also being able to be informed, get the public to understand what we're applying for, and the commissioners bought in and supportive of the grants that we're doing. So thank you very much for bringing it to us and understand the dynamics of our recent incident management transitions. So.
Yeah, and thanks for understanding as well. Normally we would bring it, as you say, it's a matter of course to have you aware of what we're applying for. This is a little backwards in that it was accepted. Central Oregon Health Council will provide us with the income. We appreciate your support.
Is there any other discussion?
I would also just say that I think this is a great project that's connecting mental health and physical health. And I know that all of you over in the Health Services Department are thinking along those lines and trying to make those connections and understanding the synergy that's possible when you're dealing with both someone's physical and mental health at the same time. So it sounds like a great project, and yeah, I guess I would say, yeah, I'd agree with Commissioner DeBonne that it's it's great for us to keep track of what to understand what county staff is doing, and there's at least at a certain point that it's administratively valuable for us to track the dollar amounts. I do wonder whether it wouldn't make sense for us to have some kind of policy where if it's a $10,000 or less request, you guys can just do it and you don't have to come and get our approval for it, and you can just tell us about it later. But that's just my opinion.
So how about I'll call for the vote, and then I've got a statement on that too. So we're in the middle of a motion. So calling for the vote, Commissioner Dare?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. So following up for future grant documentation, I would counter or just bring up the idea of how many do we have that are less than $5,000 or $10,000? I bet there's only a few. So that means we'd have one or two less meetings like this. So I don't know that there's a strategic play there, but we could ask that question, is my point.
Chair DeBonne, just a little history. There was a draft, there is a policy on applying for grants, and the Health Department put forward a draft update that would, in essence, kind of allow that. That came to the board, and at the time, the board did not want to change that process. What Health had proposed is that the grant application process be very similar to the signing authority. So anything under $150,000 could be approved administratively. But again, at the time, the board did not want to make that change.
Well, $150,000 grant that's pretty big. I mean, a $4,800 grant.
And to expand on that, the signing authority for a department head is what, $25,000?
Except for health, it's 50.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was to mirror that process.
Okay.
So as I say, I mean, I have a hunch there's only a few. We don't do this too often. It's not like we're overwhelmed with these requests. So yeah.
But the Health Council has provided that, and it's actually good to know that you're actually doing something common sense that makes a huge difference. It's direct relationship with what's happening in our community. People need to get in better shape, and when you see COVID, the fatalities from COVID, definitely, people, I don't know, you've got to be really serious about your health. It's your personal responsibility, and I thank you guys for doing something that can make a difference. So, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Yep. Thank you so much.
All right.
You still want to see a kind of list of grants at different amounts or anything?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
If it's just a couple.
Yep. No, good discussion.
And if it's just a couple, and we'd probably spend $4,800 of staff time trying to make a policy change.
There you go.
Just leave it.
Okay, at this time, other items. I think I have 2 items. Anything else? Eric?
Yes, I have one. At Friday's legislative meeting with the board, we talked about Senate Bill 801, which directs the Department of Consumer and Business Services to study issues relating to workers' compensation. There was a -1 amendment that would require all employers to send their workers' comp claims through SAFE, or that is all employers that are self-funded. Currently, Deschutes County uses a third-party administrator to process workers' comp claims, so the -1 amendment would require us to use SAFE rather than our TPA to process claims, and then SAFE would determine how much that would cost us. Our contract with our third-party administrator was bid out competitively, and staff recommends that the board take a position of opposition to the -1 amendment, and there is a draft letter for your consideration.
So I didn't bring the letter down. Do we have, the other commissioners have?
No, I don't have it.
Okay, here's a copy here, so you can share that with Commissioner Dare. Oh, yeah. And it's on my desk, I just didn't. So I mean, I support the concept of what you just explained, so now it's kind of the words of, if we agree.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, okay. So eliminate the opportunity to shop for TPA services in the open market. And then TPA is defined in the previous paragraph. Yeah. Yes,
So I move we sign the letter.
There you go.
I second.
For Senate Bill 801 1, number 1 amendment.
And it's been seconded also. Any other discussion? With hearing none, Commissioner Adair?
Yes.
Commissioner Chang?
Yes.
And Chair votes yes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Eric, how many other counties are self-insured like we are?
I don't know.
I don't think it's very many. I remember when I had my county college, the presentation and everything. It seemed like most.
Generally, the larger counties that self-insure,
Yeah, the
so
me- the
typically
medium and
smaller
large.
than us would be not.
So, yeah, we might, there's maybe 7, if we're about 7th, or relative to size or whatever. Okay, other item here, I have, this is AOC proposed due structure. You might have seen this, and this just was printed out the page. It's kind of an eye chart. And I highlighted the one line. But so what this is Association of Oregon Counties. Remember last year we paid our dues relative to the a 3% escalator from last year, which was half of what they kind of calculated they needed, knowing that this was coming. So this is a tiered fee system that's being proposed. So I just wanted to share it with you. There's a kind of a report on this. I think that the number for Deschutes County is less than what we invested last year. Yeah, so which,
less years.
that's what jumped out to me.
Yep, definitely. It was like 62,000, I think.
So it all starts with the requirement of 1.315 million, which is kind of the calculated number, and then base fee per county size, and then, if you go across. So we don't need to analyze it right now, just letting you know this is the process that's happening at Association of Oregon Counties. It's going to be a recommendation from a budget committee to the membership, maybe the board first and then the membership in the fall. So, Tom.
Just one question, I guess, I'd have with that. As you may recall, the AOC fees have historically been a base fee plus 3 or 4 voluntary or optional add-on fees for component. This is lower than the total of the base plus all the voluntary, so just wanted to clarify that this is based on everything together. In other words, there's no longer a voluntary piece to it, it's just a base, one large base fee.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's a presentation that I pulled this one page from, but it has been rolled in. It's mentioned a couple slides earlier that this is the one fee.
I guess one of my questions about this ongoing process is that if there are counties that want to free ride and don't want to pay the fee, will AOC come back to us to kind of make them whole, or will they just kind of operate at a reduced level, or?
To be discussed. Okay. So this is just pointing out that the conversation's happening. I'm not here to answer everything. But that's always the balance, though, wanting to have a 100% participation by 36 counties. There has been a spot where one county isn't participating, and it's the two ends. You think of the one largest county, and if you look at the numbers, it's larger by far. And then the small counties, it's just interesting that we're right in the middle. We're on the high side of activity now, but Multnomah is a $158,000 fee, and then the other ones are down to $10,000. The smallest counties. So, just conversation. It's out there. Once we get involved with the AOC, we'll see a little bit of this.
We're in 7th place, right?
Yeah.
Where we always are.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then also Terrebonne Advisory Committee, there's we're a process kind of beginning, getting Terrebonne conversation started again. It's basically where we're at right now. And there was an advisory committee, previous commissioners not available for that, so it's kind of a discussion amongst ourselves. I think we've all met with our road staff and ODOT representatives about kind of the big picture at this point in time. And then my understanding is this advisory committee is truly just the sounding board advisory committee. There's no real decision of we want to go this way or that way. And there's also the history of the, the couplet discussion that happened a year and a half ago or whenever it was too. So there's, as soon as this starts, it'll be a community discussion and we'll see how engaging it gets. But there's not a decision of an advisory committee at this time. We would be a decision if there's a CSP amendment like we talked about last time.
I said I would prefer to serve on that. I am the person that drives Lower Bridge in my life. I drove it yesterday. I drove down to Culver just to check things out, and because I have been dealing with it, I understand what Crooked River, those 7,000, 6,000 residents that live there, that when you hit Lower Bridge and 97 and you need to go north, you have to pray. So, yeah. It's been a part of my life.
Strong advocacy for wanting to participate.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like, this has been my life, is trying to use that road, and, oh my gosh, do I make the decision to go that way and take the chance and use, it's quite invigorating to pull out when you're pulling a horse trailer, so, even an empty one.
Invigorating, there you go.
Yes, it's invigorating.
Going back to what Commissioner DeBonne said, my understanding from the discussion with ODOT and our road department was, the advisory committee in this kind of iteration or this phase, it really is, they're not voting and then making a recommendation. They are basically the conduit to kind of present information to the public and then to invite public input on the options that are going to be presented. So,
and the big picture is there's still legislative $20 million that was approved in the transportation bill years ago. So there's a line item.
2017.
Yeah, there's a line item out there for that intersection. So
Definitely.
now this is restarting that discussion.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so I mean, if that's the role of the advisory committee, I would be equally happy to serve, but I'll defer to Commissioner Adair if she very much wants to do it.
I attended almost every one of those meetings, honestly.
No, there's no
and truly.
resistance, and we see your
I was at the meetings. It was like something that I really,
But yeah, just again emphasizing that it's going to play a different role now than it did in the last phase. So.
Well, I'll just be happy to be there.
Okay.
Really.
Okay, so.
I don't care what kind of role it is.
And, this will be an opportunity for all of us to be engaged, because I know there was a lot of communication in the last time. So this is, as I say, this will be the commissioner participating in advisory committee for this, intersection and transportation decision that's going to open up again. So I don't know if we need to formalize that or, okay, so.
I will note, my recollection was towards the end of that last process, they were noticing those. So you might check, they might be noticing those as public meetings, which case 2 or 3 of you could attend.
Oh, there you go, yeah. Well, I think maybe that, something like that was.
I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
that was my
understood.
recollection, was towards the end of that process. Last time, they did start noticing them.
And it's truly,
Media
the
was
more
showing
engagement,
up
the
and-
better, because, we need to get through this.
Yeah.
I think.
Forward instead of backward would be.
There you go. Or being able to take a left or
Yes.
go north at
Go
least
north,
somehow.
head north with horse trailer, yes. I
Yes.
would like to be able to do that safely.
Ramps and on-ramps.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, I had a COAC meeting last Thursday. Unfortunately, Sisters learned that because they did not own the land where they wanted to do the mobility center hub for $100,000, the grant that they had applied for, they were no longer eligible. So I thought that was unfortunate. And then COIC lost their auditor last spring. He suddenly passed away. And so they were on the market for an auditor, and that's a very tough ask, to get CPA firms to actually, get back to you. They did have a couple options, and so it looks like they probably will be able to go ahead with an auditor that's going to take over for a period of time. So, yeah, it can be quite expensive.
So that's COACT, correct?
The first was COAC, and then it was COIC for the auditor.
Okay. So I guess, yeah, I'm just looking back at my schedule now. Last Thursday afternoon, I did join the other persons from District 2. So that was 6 of us with Leo Horner and, Governor's Regional Solutions Representative. And it was just the discussion about COVID and how the numbers are possibly going up again. In Deschutes County, we may be seeing a change of status at some point.
They went down today. back
Which
down
is
to
wonderful,
238.
yeah, so we'll see what
Yeah.
happens here. And, yeah, I mean, the concept that, if hospitalizations are, not big and deaths are down, this may be a different environment than.
And vaccinations are
Yeah.
proceeding.
So, yeah, it could be interesting in the next couple of weeks where we go. So that was the
So-
discussion.
You don't have any,
No announcements of any sort, no. But, I mean, we were all fed back, basically all the commissioners said, at some point aiming for, local control is the word I would use, but, the fact that if we step back up and restaurants have to go, down a level in occupancy, it's gonna be a lot harder this time, just for small business owners and.
Yeah, and sudden, it'll feel very sudden to people.
Yeah, with the weather turning so nice.
Kind of like whiplash.
Yep.
The only other thing I would share are, last Thursday, I gave a little talk I actually recruited Ed Keith to join me, but we gave a little talk for the League of Women Voters about vegetation management and fuels reduction.
Great.
So that was fun. And then maybe I shouldn't even bother talking about this until after it happens, but the membership, the steering committee members for the Deschutes Collaborative Forest Project nominated me to be their co-chair. So they'll vote on that sometime in the next couple of weeks. And
Good luck, yeah.
and then, so I might be serving at the co-chair level for that group moving forward.
Okay, good. Anything else? So seeing none, we do have executive session scheduled today for employee evaluation, the ORS 1926602I. At this time, the Zoom meeting will be finished, and we will go into executive session and not come back with the video.